April 17, 2026. For the first time in weeks, the skies over Israel and Lebanon have gone quiet, bombs and rockets have stopped, the sirens have faded, but in the Middle East, silence is rarely peace, it's just the pause before the next chapter. The United States, Israel, Iran, and Lebanon are all holding their breath over a brand new 10-day ceasefire, while behind the scenes, high-stake diplomacy is racing to stop a full-scale regional war. On today's channel, we're breaking down what this ceasefire means, why it's so fragile, and how Donald Trump's push for a broader Iran peace deal could change the map of the Middle East. At midnight local time, a 10-day ceasefire went into effect along the Israel-Lebanon border. The deal was announced by President Donald Trump and supported by the U.S. and Lebanese governments, but notably not signed by Hezbollah. That's the first red flag. Under the agreement, Israel has agreed to halt major military operations in southern Lebanon, and Hezbollah has signaled it will stop firing rockets and missiles into Israel. In theory, this gives over 1 million displaced Lebanese civilians a chance to return home and allows Israel's border towns to take a breath after weeks of near-daily missile barrages. But on the ground, the truth is more complicated. Israeli forces still occupy a strip of southern Lebanon, including key towns like Qiyam. The Israeli military has warned displaced residents not to return yet because the ceasefire is only 10 days long and could shatter at any moment. On the other side of the border, Hezbollah finds itself in a delicate position. The group has not formally signed the ceasefire, yet it has told its fighters to respect it for now. In a brief statement, Hezbollah's leadership said, "The hands of these fighters will remain on the trigger, anticipating the enemy's treachery and violation of promises." In other words, they're holding back rockets, but they're still ready to respond instantly if Israel attacks again. That's why analysts call this a compliance with reservations ceasefire, not a true peace deal. This ceasefire is also loaded with conditions. Lebanon's President Joseph Aoun has demanded that the Israeli military withdraw from Lebanese territory within the first 10 days. If that doesn't happen, the shaky truce could collapse fast and the rocket fire and Israeli airstrikes could restart within hours. The Israel-Lebanon ceasefire is just one front in a much bigger war, the U.S.-Iran conflict that has turned the Gulf into a high-tension zone. Ever since the U.S. and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iranian nuclear-related targets in late February, Iran has retaliated with waves of missiles and drones against U.S. bases in the Gulf and against Israeli cities. The Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical oil choke point, has been effectively shut down by the war. Many ships are stuck, waiting for the smoke to clear and the bullets to stop. Now, thanks to earlier talks brokered by Pakistan, the U.S. and Iran are in a limited 2-week ceasefire. Both sides are still claiming victory, but the guns are quiet for now. The U.S. has thousands of troops and warships in the Gulf, and Iran's Revolutionary Guard is on full alert. One misstep, one accidental strike, and the entire region could snap back into open war. Walking over this tightrope right now is Donald Trump. In public statements, the U.S. president has sounded optimistic, even triumphant, predicting that the Iran war should be ending pretty soon and that good things are happening with the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire. But behind the scenes, the mood is far more cautious. American officials are talking about a pause, not a peace deal, and the Pentagon has made it clear that U.S. forces are still fully prepared to resume major combat operations at a moment's notice. The same is true for Iran. Pakistan's Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, has been quietly trying to push the U.S. and Iran into direct negotiations, using the current ceasefire window as leverage. The logic is simple. If the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire holds, it might create enough breathing room for high-level talks that could lead to a broader, long-term agreement. But if the truce breaks, the war could spiral into a much wider conflict, possibly dragging in the Gulf states, Russia, and even European powers. Diplomats and generals debate numbers and red lines. The real cost of this war can be measured in one number: over 1 million people. That's how many Lebanese civilians have been forced to flee their homes in the south because of Israeli strikes and Hezbollah's rocket fire. Families have packed their cars, grabbed their passports, and driven north toward Beirut, hoping this ceasefire will last long enough for them to go back. In Israel, border towns like Kiryat Shmona and Mechela have lived through months of missile alerts, air raids, and the constant fear of the next strike. The Iron Dome network has intercepted thousands of rockets, but even one that gets through can change a family's life forever. Civilians here are watching the 10-day window carefully, hoping this is the beginning of the end, not just another brief pause in a long war. So what does this moment mean for the rest of the world? Short term, the ceasefire is a relief. Oil prices might dip slightly. The risk of a full-scale Gulf War goes down just a bit, and the people of southern Lebanon get a rare chance to rebuild some part of their normal lives. But long-term, nothing is guaranteed. The 10-day clock is ticking. If Israeli troops do not withdraw from southern Lebanon, if Hezbollah feels cornered, or if Iran and the US can't translate this ceasefire into a real peace deal, the Middle East is still one spark away from the next explosion. If you're watching this from the US, Europe, or Asia, this is not a distant crisis. It's a potential energy shock, a global security threat, and a test of whether the world's superpowers can de-escalate instead of pushing the button. The next 10 days will tell us whether the Middle East is stepping back from the edge, or just catching its breath before the fall. For more in-depth coverage of the Iran war, the Gaza-Israel conflict, and the broader geopolitical shifts in 2026, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. We'll be here every day, unpacking the stories the mainstream barely explains.